Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar hosted by the ASA, CSSA, and SSSA Women in Science Committee and supported by the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee and the Agronomic Science Foundation. I'm Susan Chapman, Director of Special Projects at the Societies, and I'll be your host for today's webinar, Cultivating Respect in the Workplace. Before we get started, we have a couple of quick notes for you. Please enter your questions in the Q&A section at any time. We'll address them at the end. If you experience any technical difficulties, you can call our support center at 608-273-8080, and this information is also in the chat. And today's webinar is worth 1 CEU, and to receive credit, you'll need to stay for the full webinar until the end. The credit will be posted to your account shortly after. So let's get started. Our moderator today is Dr. Lakshmi Manavalan, Senior Program Manager, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Dr. Manavalan, I will pass the mic off to you to get us started.
Thank you, Susan. Good morning, good afternoon, all. My name is Lakshmi Manavalan. I'm a Senior Program Officer at the Gates Foundation, and I'm the chair of the 2025 Women in Science Committee. I have been a member of the SPRI Societies for 17 years, and I'm very pleased to welcome you all to this important webinar sponsored by the committee. Today, we will start with an introduction to this topic by Doris Mold, who has been graciously working with us on Cultivating Resiliency program co-lead, and then we will have a Q&A talk with our panelists. We have a really great diverse set of panelists today, including background from industry, academia, extension, teaching. I'm going to ask each of the speakers to do their own very short introductions during the first question when I ask them. So with that, Doris, we would like to welcome you and give us your views about cultivating respect in the workplace. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today with you. And I'm going to start off by sharing my presentation, and we were joking in advance that, you know, in my 10 minutes I'll just have 50 or 60 slides, but for those of you, I think most of us have experienced that at some point or another in a class that we've taken, either recently or long ago and far away. But pleased to be with all of you here today. So as they said, I am co-CEO of Annie's Project, and I am the co-lead on the Cultivating Resiliency project. Just so you know a little bit about me, and Annie's Project, we engage, educate, and empower women in agriculture. We are a women-focused organization, although we welcome all people to participate, and we do have all people to participate. My role in Cultivating Resiliency for Women in Agriculture, we work with women in agriculture to cultivate resiliency and reduce stress and manage those things that can be managed. So if you're interested in either of these, I'd be happy to visit with you at some other time about those things. Just a little bit more about myself too. You can see on the screen all the different things that I am. I wear a lot of different hats, and I often confuse people. Just so you know kind of where I'm coming from when we look at cultivating resiliency in the workplace. So you know that I have worked in kind of a diverse range of things, partly because I've been on this earth a little bit longer than many of you, but I have worked for a major ag corporation. I've worked in academia and doing research and teaching, a nonprofit, in consulting. I work as a farmer. I work in all of these different areas. So I've fortunately gained so many different perspectives based off of that different work, and I've had some different experience as well that I hope to share with you today. Now, when it comes to cultivating respect in the workplace, unfortunately, not everyone is going to like you, and not everyone is going to be respectful. And, you know, coming out of college, you know, I had this really bright, shining kind of eagerness to get out there in the workplace, and I had done well in school, and I thought that, that the respect that I had garnered in college and the work that I had done would just automatically transfer out to the great big world. And that wasn't necessarily the case. The good news is there are more people out there that will respect you if you practice certain skills. And I think the first thing that we have to talk about is that I think especially today, society is just so fractured that we need to remember, all of us need to remember, that we need to ourselves start at a place of respect. Now, some people might disappoint us, and we're human, so humans will disappoint us because none of us is perfect. But just remember that and kind of think of that as you go out and do whatever you're doing. So first of all, these are not necessarily in any kind of particular order. But the number one on my list, I will say that this is number one, is do respect the number one in your life. And the number one in your life should be you. If you do not respect yourself and you're not kind to yourself and offer yourself grace, how is anyone else going to respect you? So that's number one. And I think oftentimes and I think particularly for women, I think everybody does it, but I think particularly women, we oftentimes tear ourselves down and aren't respectful of ourselves. And so we need to think of ourselves, and not in a selfish way and not in an egotistical way, but we need to respect ourselves first and foremost. And then from there, everything else follows. So I've got some do's of cultivating respect rather than, let's approach this from a positive standpoint. So do follow the golden rule. Do treat others as you should want yourself to be treated. As I said, if you're not respecting yourself, you're not really following, it's tough to follow the golden rule there, because then you're going to be disrespectful of other people. But follow the golden rule. Treat other people with respect. Sometimes that's difficult, but that is something that, keep yourself above the fray. Do practice integrity. This is really important, and this is part of respecting yourself. I know that I worked in a corporate environment where I was asked to break a federal law, and I refused to do that. And I could have done it, and I don't know, but it was not even something that I entertained, because breaking that kind of rule is just not what I'm about. And I eventually left that company that asked me to do that. It was an individual at the company. I don't know, I kind of tie those two together. But if what you're doing and where you're working and is not providing you with the respect, you need to respect yourself enough to leave that environment or leave that person if it's an individual that you're working with or involved with. But you have to practice integrity and practice that in all that you do. Do show an interest in everyone. Don't dismiss anyone. Sometimes we look at somebody and we say, well, they're nobody. I don't need to pay attention to them. I'm going to, and you'll see this if you've worked with politicians. They'll scan the room and look to see, well, who are the people that they should be talking to? And, who are the important people in the room? But never forget that sometimes the important people, that first of all, that everybody's important, but you don't know who the people are that you're talking to. And so I know I had an example this spring. I was going to be the keynote speaker at an FFA event. And as I was walking in, I met an FFA state officer and I engaged with her briefly, but she sort of dismissed me. It was like, okay, you're nobody. So she kept walking. And then later on, after I was introduced as the keynote speaker for the event and did my talking, she came up to me afterwards, and she was right by my warm side. Suddenly I was somebody, and she didn't realize that before. And she's young, and I'm sure that I did that as well. I probably dismissed plenty of people in my life, but it doesn't feel very good when you're dismissed. So if you don't want to be dismissed, don't dismiss others. Do take responsibility for what is yours, both when good things happen and not so good things happen. If you take responsibility for mistakes, more people are going to respect you for that if you say, no, that's on me, rather than throwing somebody else under the bus and saying it was somebody else's fault. Most people realize that people do make mistakes, and if you take responsibility for what is yours, you are going to raise that level of respect. Do be gracious in both victory and defeat. And I think this oftentimes you think of sporting activities, but this can be for anything. If you're in a competition with somebody, if you're in a paper competition, or you are working on, developing a new variety of wheat or whatever it is, if you've done well, be gracious there, but also be gracious when things don't work out your way. And then that follows, give credit where credit is due. It doesn't hurt you or diminish you if you give credit to people that have done something well. So respecting people and calling people out when they've done great work, do that because they deserve that. Do the hard work. Make sure that that you are not in it. You don't just lay back and wait for somebody else to do the work, that you go out and do that hard work. You do the hard work on your research or on your sales or on your teaching or whatever it is that you do. And do agree to disagree and keep calm. And notice that I've inserted an extra L just to make sure that you understand that I'm human just like you. The thing is that again, this comes back to just how we can have conflict. We can have good, vigorous discussion. We can be on other sides of an issue, but that doesn't make you or I a bad person. And we need to keep calm. And those people that aren't necessarily always respectful in how they act towards you, especially when you're on opposite sides having a disagreement about something, one thing that will drive people crazy is if you remain calm and don't get super emotional along with them. Now, I'm not saying never be emotional. Sometimes emotion is called for, but for the most part, keeping calm, not raising your voice, bringing that tone down. I've had that happen. I had somebody have a major disagreement with me. They were yelling at me in a very public place. This person was a highly respected individual in their field. And I just remained very calm. And it was hard because I can get emotional like any of the rest of you. But keeping calm and just keeping yourself centered, you know what? And I kept calm. He stopped yelling eventually. Later on, he came back and he apologized to me, which is something people said that he never did. So again, gaining that respect. All right, pretty obvious. Do show up, dress professionally, speak confidently. When you're going to be teaching, and I know I ran into this when I'm teaching people that were older than me, I made sure that I dressed professionally, that I didn't look like I was going out clubbing or that I was in a pajama party. Make sure that you have dressed for success and that you speak confidently. Do seek out others for advice. Do support others in their journey. There's so many more do's, and you are going to learn so much from the upcoming panel. I'm really looking forward to what they have to say. But remember, above all, in cultivating respect, you do you. You have to be true to yourself. Thank you very much. I will get back here and stop my share.
Thank you very much, Doris. I am really inspired by the list of do's, and I think it is a reinforcement that we have this list now to refer, and your wonderful introduction. With that in mind, let's hear from our panelists. We have a number of questions for our panelists. First, we will ask each panelist to briefly introduce themselves as they answer the first question. The first question is, what does respect in the workplace look like for you? I will start with Kristen.
Hi, thank you for the introduction, and it's my pleasure to be here today. So I'm Kristen Rinehart Krebs. I'm coming to you as the industry representative. So I'm a seed R&D pipeline development leader at Corteva AgriScience. So at Corteva, I am part of the innovation management team, where it's my responsibility to connect research with business strategy, supporting a diverse crop portfolio. So I've been here for over 16 years and have experience in field-based trait characterization, agronomics, pipeline valuation, and really are play a key role in helping to advance our pipeline concepts and shape investment planning for future innovation. So I have a PhD in plant breeding and genetics from Purdue University and a bachelor's in biology from Wittenberg. And I'm coming to you from central Iowa, where I live and work these days. So to answer the question of what respect in the workplace looks like for me, copy paste of Doris's list, but one of the words that wasn't there that resonates with me is trust. Is respect translates to trust. It's trust that my voice will be heard and in the actions taken that I'm recommending, but also making sure that giving credit and really starting at that place of respect for myself, that I like feeling confident that the recommendations I made, the interactions that I had throughout the day at the office, that I can drive home and feel good about what I brought and delivered myself that day. So with that, I could keep going on, but I'll leave time for the other panelists.
Thank you, Kristen. Now we would like to hear from Amy Schuber.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Schuber. I'm a professor and extension specialist, so I'm coming to you from the side of extension here. I'm with the University of Delaware. I've been here since 2013. I actually did my PhD in plant and soil sciences here at the University of Delaware, but spent 7 years at the University of Florida as an extension specialist, where I really kind of cut my teeth on working with agricultural clientele and also with researchers. When it comes to respect, I mean, it is a really important topic that we're talking about. And I think one of the things I think about is having a place where all people are valued for their contributions, and that it's recognized that not everybody has the same skill set, but everybody has something to offer. And so I always like to think about how I treat the other people I work with, whether or not they're my peers at the same level or they're other staff that may be working with me. I think everybody deserves that respect. And if you model that respect, it helps for others to respect you. Again, agreed with what Doris and Kristen were saying about the different things. You definitely have to respect yourself first, feel confident, and know that you are going to run into people who do not respect you. And you have to know how to manage that. And I think the best way to do that, in my opinion, is just to, like Doris said, keep calm, but also to treat those people the way you wish that they were treating you, which can sometimes be very challenging. But with that, I'll turn it over to Laura.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Bowling. I'm a professor and head of the Department of Agronomy at Purdue University. My degrees are actually in civil engineering. I study hydrology and water resources. And so I worked in environmental consulting for a few years before returning to graduate school and then on to academia. So my research in sustainable water management has taken me to some diverse field locations. So I've done field research in Arctic Alaska and in the Peruvian desert. I also had a primary teaching role for about a 5-year period as well. So research and teaching has been my background. Overall, I came to the Department of Agronomy as a bit of an outsider 21 years ago. but did sufficiently gain the trust of my colleagues that I became head of the department last year. And to me, that trust is key, similar to what Kristen said, that to me, respect looks a lot like trust. If someone, if I gain someone's respect, I think it means that they have confidence in my abilities and a belief that I will do what I say I'm going to do and then I'll follow through. And that leads to a willingness for people to give the benefit of the doubt and assume good intentions. And that's critical. As Doris alluded to, that in today's environment, we're pretty fractured, and so much of our communication happens over email or virtually. And often you can't infer tone or infer what someone truly was trying to say. And giving the grace that you assume that they meant no harm because you respect them can be a big start to meaningful conversation. Thanks.
Great, thank you everyone for sharing your perspectives. And for me, one thing in the list was showing interest to others. I actually came from an academic followed by an industry background. Now I am in a nonprofit organization. I work with people from multiple countries and cultures. So I think taking an attempt to understand the cultural background of people is really valuable also when gaining respect or being treating others with respect. So now I will move into our second question. If you have had any, can you talk about the challenges you have had in earning respect in your workplace? And are certain settings more challenging than others?
I'll go ahead and field that question first, Lakshmi. So I have two perspectives here on challenges I've had earning respect in the workplace. First, among my peers, I, working in extension, tend to do a lot of applied science. And we do have oftentimes folks who we're working with who are on the applied side, but also folks who are doing more fundamental research. And for a long time, I found it challenging to earn the respect of those folks who were doing that fundamental research, thinking that maybe the work that we did that was applied didn't really have as much value as what was being done in the other areas. And what I've learned as an extension specialist is it's all about how you tell your story, because some of the best impact we can have is by translating some of that fundamental work into something that helps a person do better in their lives. So grow more corn or make more money or be more successful. So being able to tell your story and show the impact that you're having goes a long way toward earning respect in that type of professional situation. I also then have to work with agricultural clientele who sometimes, as being a woman in a farming community, they're not always going to look at you the same way. And so that had also been challenging in my career. I mean, I've been doing this now for almost 25 years. And I will say that it was difficult as a young woman who came from a non-agricultural background to earn respect amongst that group. But I just kind of kept at it, making sure that I was always humble about when I didn't know the answers to the questions that they had, making sure I was timely in getting back to them with the information that they needed, and just showing that I cared about what their concerns were, that I was working on issues that they thought were important. And over time, I think it comes down to what Kristen said too. That's how you earn people's trust. And once you start to earn the trust of your agricultural clientele, they'll start coming to you with more questions, and they'll start being more open with you about the things that they need us to try to solve for them.
I can just follow up on that a little bit. I think Amy spoke to the situation very well. You know, there are some people who do garner respect just by walking in the room. A lot of older gentlemen, for example, right? But unfortunately, for a lot of us, that's not the case. That you don't, as Doris mentioned, that she wasn't recognized as the keynote speaker. So just by her presence, didn't immediately have everyone falling to their knees. And for the most part, I'm okay with that because I do believe that respect is something that has to be earned, and it's based on a long-term relationship. But for me, it makes the most challenging situations when you have to sort of walk in cold to a situation as the outsider and try to get people to listen to you when you don't have time to build that relationship and establish respect. I'm confident when I'm going to be working with colleagues over time that through that give and take of working together that we can establish mutual respect. But coming into those situations as a bit of an outsider, I think it's a balancing act because you want to establish that you do have a voice worth listening to without trying to, dominate the room when maybe you don't really know exactly what you're talking about. And so it has to involve careful listening, read the room, figure out who the personalities are, figure out what's going on. If you have pertinent information to the discussion that's happening, don't hold back, volunteer that. And be ready if when called on to express your opinion, right? Don't be afraid of expressing an opinion just because you're an outsider, but you do have to take some time to listen as well.
Thank you so much, Amy and Laura, for this feedback. And I think a lot of us can connect some of these situations in our career. I will move on to the next question. Are there trajectories like time or longevity in earning respect that are part of establishing yourself in your field as the expert in workplace? And what tips can you offer those who are here today that are just starting out or maybe still in school, like grad school? I would really like to hear from you, Laura and Kristen.
I'll get us started.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's a lot of what's been said, but I'll bring maybe some different examples. I think the biggest thing is building your network, and it's not necessarily just within your immediate bubble, but it's seeking to understand. So again, being at Corteva, it's a very large global company, a lot of diversity in projects and work that's being done, and I don't understand all of it. And I think that's part of it is not pretending that I know everything, because I absolutely do not. And that will be recognized immediately. And then again, kind of builds on that distrust. So being able to say, I don't understand. Can you help me? Or tell me more about what you do? And just asking those questions, I think, goes a really long way of building trust, which then builds the respect. I think another piece too is just admitting when you're wrong, saying, here's what I assumed, and those assumptions were wrong. Let's move forward from that. That goes a long way, and it's not always the easiest thing to do, especially if you're new in a career, but it does go a long way in building that trust. And then I think too, just gathering different perspectives, even if you're coming into industry or coming into an area and you did your graduate work or went to school in it and think you're very familiar with it, just getting someone else's perspective of saying, hey, what do you think of this? That it goes a long way of building the relationship, that it does have that shared understanding and makes those connections. And it works to building your network, building your understanding, building your perspectives of what's there. And again, those go a long way in kind of working on a career and thinking of future trajectories.
So this thinking of trajectories and timeline, kind of thinking of it in a couple of different ways. I think there's absolutely a timeline to developing respect, because it does develop over time. It does mean, I think, that it becomes easier and a little bit as you're more established in your career, because you have that history and a reputation, hopefully for the better, but that you're carrying with you. And so I think there are perhaps more challenges for those starting out in their career. Working in academia in particular, but I think in a variety of different settings, as a young professional, it is difficult to right, you're second guessing yourself. And so then people are going to second guess you as well. And so I find that establishing boundaries is an important part. For me in academia, using titles was part of my establishing boundaries and trying to set myself apart, that I wasn't one of the students. And so I have always expected students in the classroom to call me Dr. Bowling, because a little too much familiarity can make it more difficult to establish that I was the one in the charge of that situation. So I do encourage boundaries and titles. Being friendly with subordinates, but not friends, is also an important part of that. If you then need to turn around and pass judgment on somebody's performance, it becomes very, very difficult if they thought you were a friend and you were a supervisor. I think the last part of those thoughts would be, even though that is very difficult to establish respect in the early years, I think some people spend too much time worrying about being disrespected, and a lot of emotional energy on that as well. And so sometimes you are being disrespected. And I think it was said earlier, you just need to treat that person how you wish they were treating you, and perhaps move on and focus on your own performance and let your work speak for itself.
Thank you, Kristen and Laura. Very helpful. And yeah, sometimes I also agree with you that maybe if someone is questioning you, you can ask them, how would you do this? I think that sometimes also is a way of gaining respect. That's really helpful. And I think, again, from both of you, what I'm gathering is gaining the trust and building the trustful relationship is quite important with our workplace. So now, shifting to field, I would like to ask Amy and Laura, if you can, how do the field settings change the power dynamics or respect? I think we heard about your workplace now, and how can these be addressed or overcome? Maybe we'll start with Amy and then move to Laura.
Sure. Okay, so thinking about field settings, I think sometimes it's the level of comfort you have with where you are at that moment, right? So a lot of us are very confident in our science. If we're lab people, we feel really good in the lab. We feel like we know what we're doing, and it's easier to kind of portray that confidence. That helps to earn that respect. And then sometimes you can find yourself in a place where maybe you aren't the expert, or you're a little bit more tentative about the situation. And I would say certainly working with even like our farm staff or folks in the field, when I was a younger faculty member, a younger researcher, I felt a little bit out of my element, and it can be really challenging sometimes to, portray that confidence. But again, I think we talk about, admitting when you don't know the answers to things, listening to other people, respecting their knowledge, treating them the same way that you would like to be treated. And I think a lot of times as your confidence grows, the more you do something, the better you're going to feel, and the more people are going to respect you in that moment too.
One of the challenges that I see in a field setting is I just said that, establishing boundaries was part of my process of establishing respect, using titles, having some distance. Well, naturally, in the case of doing field work with the team, those boundaries are going to erode. And insisting on titles in the field, I mean, there are safety concerns there, right? If you need to get someone's attention, you need to get them quickly. And so that's where I think there's a challenge also in sort of establishing and maintaining respect when you don't have as much hierarchy in traditional boundaries. For me, working on respect in the field has involved a lot of establishing common ground and working alongside people that I have to say, now that I'm in an administrative role, I'm not as much in the field. So sometimes I am asking people to do things I wouldn't do. But traditionally, I have not asked people to do things in the field that I wasn't doing myself. I'm modeling the behavior with them. I'm working alongside them. And I think that's an important part to establishing respect in the field.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to remind the audience that we would love to hear some questions from you all also. So please feel free to put in your questions in the question box. I'll move to our next question. I think such a rich diversity of backgrounds you all have. Could you please give us some tips on what are the strategies you have used for earning respect without compromising who you are?
Yeah, I'll get us started here. So one of the biggest strategies that I use is active listening. So not just listening, but actively hearing what they're saying and playing that back of, again, kind of back to the help me understand, or here's what I think I heard you say. Does it mean this? And just having, again, that shared understanding, especially in times of conflict. And that's really the context of that. It's good to always actively listen, especially if you're a people leader, of hearing what your team wants, what your team needs. But again, I think we've all got examples of conflict and challenge, and the workplace is no exception to that. And that's where that active listening and respect really come hand in hand, of saying help me understand, where are you coming from, or here's what I'm hearing you say, and how can we get to a shared point, and really doing that together instead of just coming in and saying, nope, this is the way it's going to be, or this is what I think it is, and that's the way it is. And I think that's part of it too, is it's having a conversation and those open channels of communication, of saying, well, here's my take on it, and here's why. Being in research, the why usually involves some form of data or being able to back it up with something there. And so it's being able to have that's been a strategy that's really been beneficial for me. That is something that someone late career, mid-career, early career can all work on. That's, again, not necessarily a class you can take in college, but that really goes a long way of building your network, building that respect, and ultimately building trust to help you establish yourself.
I will take this in a completely different direction, I think. But when thinking about not compromising who you are, I often think too about, not everybody is the same type of person. You've got introverts, you've got extroverts, you've got people who are thinkers, people who are action people, doers, all sorts of different kinds of personalities that you have to deal with. And I can tend to be a little silly and sometimes have what I think is a funny sense of humor, and other people may not relate to that at all. And so it kind of comes back to, I think it was Laura that said at some point, sometimes you have to read the room, right? You just have to know the people that you're with, which takes the time to actively learn who you're working with, listen to them, find out who they are, and know when you have, know who you can, how to behave in a specific situation, because some people might be up for that more funny side of things, and other people might think that is not appropriate for the workplace. So what I've done, is I try to be true to myself, but I also don't change myself, but know when to temper some of those things that others might not find to be worthy of respect.
I think, Amy, one piece there that just to add on a little bit is I remind myself too that everybody's a person at the end of the day. So Laura's talked a lot about kind of establishing boundaries and all of that, and you've got that in industry too, that you've got different levels of leadership. But at the end of the day, even the CEO is a person, and that's people that you're interacting with. So having that kind of mindset when you're going into it too, especially, well, all the time, but especially in those times of conflict, I think helps ground it a little bit too. Of at the end of the day, we're all going somewhere that's not the office, and that helps a little bit.
Thank you so much, Amy and Christine. I actually resonated myself with your ideas, and one thing I thought was also don't be shy to ask. when I worked in academia and ended up in a large company like Bayer, I was like in the middle of so many things. The people you have already read their papers to the people who just are starting as a research associate with you. So I think it's okay to ask what you wanted to be and how you wanted to set your goals for the next year or two. I think that always helped me. So I wanted to share that perspective also. So that's really great. We do have time for one more question to our excellent panel. So I'm going to ask quickly, from your point of view, what can institutions and mentors do better or to become allies in helping others to gain respect?
Yeah, I think this is really important. And this, again, the answer can apply to any level of your career. So if you're just started or if you've been there, I think it's getting a mentor, or even, I mean, sometimes the word mentor can have negative connotations depending on your experience in the past, but really think of it as a trusted advisor. And it can be as simple to, I think sometimes, I know, especially when I look back to early careers, I was intimidated by that I thought getting a mentor was this heavy lift and I had to establish this relationship with somebody, and what if it didn't work, or what if we weren't a good fit? And I think you just have to start, and having a mentor or a trusted advisor can be as simple as, hey, can we grab coffee one morning? It can be a one-time interaction that can leave you with some little nuggets of value that can go. And it can be as, she's now a friend, but somebody that was set up with me as a mentor within my first year of starting, that now we go to lunch weekly and we still talk career, work stuff, all of that. And she's really a trusted advisor there. And so when you're looking at it, and again, I'm speaking from my personal experience, but also the industry perspective, I think when we look at how institutions can become better allies in earning respect, it's being open to these opportunities. That if you're a people leader, it's hearing what your employees want and saying, hey, why don't you chat with this person that I think they'd be able to offer some insights or some value there. If your leader or your manager is not doing that, asking for it, or asking for it yourself, of going. I've had people that have come up to me after a presentation saying, Kristen, I'd love to learn more about what you were talking about. Can we talk about that sometime? And it usually is a technical thing, but then 9 times out of 10, it turns into kind of a career journey and in that more mentoring type relationship. And so I just encourage you, as a lot of times, I know at Corteva there are formal mentoring programs, but there's a lot of informal mentoring that goes. So if you're seeking a mentor, don't hesitate to ask. I know it can be hard, but once you do the first time and hopefully see the value in it, that the next time gets a little easier. And then if somebody asks you to chat, don't hesitate to say no, of kind of putting on that mentor hat and acknowledging that even if you're early in your career, your perspective is valuable and it's unique to you, and it's something that's worth sharing with others. And so just, again, being open to those opportunities and being that resource.
Thank you, Kristen. Amy, Laura, do you have any additions?
No, just briefly, I think that Kristen's point about mentorship is fantastic. And so I do think, because I think the original question, what can institutions do? I do think establishing formal mentoring programs can be very useful, because they can help to take some of that burden away from someone who is intimidated by approaching a mentor on their own. If there's an established program, then it helps to get that started. Just so you're not putting all of the burden on the young professional for figuring out how to do it all on their own.
Excellent. So now we have some fantastic questions from our audience. I would like to bring 2 or 3 of those questions to you. So there are 2 questions related to establishing the boundaries. So can you expand on establishing boundaries, especially when there is a conflict? How can I get my no to be respected?
I guess that's on me because I'm the one who talked about establishing boundaries, and now I have to come up with good examples. How can you get your no to be respected in particular? I think, am I the best one to answer this question since I said I wasn't going to be department head, and look at here where I am. But part of it is you don't engage in the conversation, right? If you've said no and you've given your reasons, then it's the end of the conversation, and just don't open that door again. So if people keep coming back or they keep trying to suggest doubt, you just need to shut it down and say that we've already established that. That if you continue to engage, then you're saying that you're open to the idea of being convinced otherwise, or that you didn't really know your own mind or something like that. So,
I would say no is a complete sentence.
Exactly.
Yeah, honestly, too, I think as a young professional, that's where hopefully your leadership is there to help you and support you in those ways too. And, you know, I laughed, you probably saw me laugh out loud when Laura said, look at me, I didn't expect to be the department head, but being an extension, we have a problem with saying no also. So you also have to know to respect your own time and yourself, because if you don't say no, sometimes you will end up burnt out. And so if you're not confident in your no, or someone's giving you a hard time about your no, hopefully you have a mentor or a supervisor who can help and make that more firm with whoever is trying to persuade you otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, right? Go to others and involve them in the conversation. And sometimes you do need to bring in other people to back you up, especially if there's a power dynamic, right? A power differential in the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So the next question, a close to heart question. What advice would you give to a young woman with a disability that is just starting to get into the work environment?
So broad, I'm not sure where to start. And especially because every situation is different, every disability is different. So figuring out specific advice for how to navigate that. And since some disabilities are obvious and some are more hidden, it's often a challenge in terms of how open you are to communicating about your own disability and how that is bringing in limitations or different opportunities in the workplace. So figuring out what you're comfortable telling people, or where you might need support from a supervisor for disclosing information, so that you can clearly establish what is possible, what accommodations are needed, and just being very upfront about that, so that you're making sure that you can contribute to your absolute best potential, and that you have the structure in place to do that.
I would just second that. Of again, at your level of comfort, ask for what you need. I'll give an example. I worked with somebody who was hard of hearing that struggled in meetings where there were multiple people talking, and she was open with that and said, hey, so a lot of times if we do have that, now we'll do meetings virtually and we'll turn on transcription, which helps. Or we know she's more likely to say, hey, I missed that. Can you repeat that? And again, it's because she shared that with us and was open of saying, hey, I need this support, and was upfront in asking for it. So again, at your level of comfort of sharing, don't hesitate to ask for what you need to be successful.
I do know that it can be exhausting to constantly have to be your own advocate. And I've been working with a student the last couple of years for her. That's become a huge burden. And so I do think, right, the mentorship, having mentors and trusted colleagues that you can talk to about that, to help share the burden, right? If there are other people looking out for some of your accommodations, who can maybe remind colleagues, so that you don't always have to be the one reminding them that you need someone to turn on the closed captioning, can be a huge relief, right? If you can find a couple of advocates.
Great, thank you so much. I do have one quick question that came also. What is the craziest thing that a farmer or co-worker has said to you, and how did you handle it? I think this is specifically coming from someone who worked in the retail agronomy sales and often had farmers make comments about weight, marital status, or pregnancy. Very quick thought will be appreciated.
I'm happy to field that one. I will say, surprisingly, it was a colleague who said the craziest thing to me after I came back from maternity leave. I was very hungry after we were postponed from getting lunch, and I was told, you know, Amy, you better watch out. You're no longer eating for two. Yet I was nursing, so I was eating for a larger second person now. And interestingly, I stayed calm. I think that's one of the things, is not to, lose your cool. But surprisingly, it was the culture of our department was such that the other members of my department were very quick to school this individual on the inappropriate nature of his comments. And I just matter of factly told him, well, unfortunately, that is not the case. I do now have a larger child who I am also still feeding. So, it was kind of funny in the moment, but definitely crazy. But just kind of keep your cool, and hopefully other people have your back.
Thank you so much, Amy. So we are almost close to our time with the questions. Can I please ask Doris to reflect some final thoughts before we hand it over to Susan for closing remarks?
Well, first of all, I think we need to applaud the panel. What awesome women, and brought up some really terrific examples and thoughts. I think, and something that really struck me is that when Laura said, sometimes we spend too much time worrying about being disrespected. And I think there's a lot of that just generally goes on in the world, that we spend, and I'll tell you, I'm a classic overthinker. It took me a long time to think about what I wanted to bring in today, and I think a lot of times we overthink, and maybe I think that may be a more of a feminine trait, that we all got to get, and we let things spin around in our minds. And I think it's really important to take on what everyone has said today, the examples, the questions that have come up, the responses, but don't focus on the negative. Don't focus on those people that aren't being respectful. Don't listen to the toxic people that are out there. Focus on the positive, and focus on how you can be the best you. Show gratitude. Come to things from a mindset of gratitude and positivity. And there are more people out there that are going to respect you for taking that approach than coming at it from a negative perspective. And so just wanted to kind of put yourself in that mindset, that positivity and graciousness. And I think if you remind yourself of that, that you'll be in a much better place from a respect standpoint, not only from others, but for yourself as well.
Thank you, Doris. Susan, may I ask you to do the closing remarks?
Yes. Well, I want to thank all of you, Doris, Laura, Kristen, and Amy, for your expertise and insights on today's webinar, and Lakshmi for sharing your insights and taking the time to moderate. We so appreciate it. Now, I have to mention, at the Canvas meeting, the Women in Science Committee is also presenting a workshop titled Cultivating Resiliency, Thriving in Science Careers. And Doris will also be speaking at that workshop. It's Tuesday from 1:30 to 4:30. sponsored by the Agronomic Science Foundation and the DEI Committee. It's a ticketed event with a great discount for students and early career attendees. So in addition to some presentations, we'll have some panel discussions. We're also going to have some interactive discussions amongst the audience members. We're also having a reception, which everyone always has a great time at, and everyone will receive a special commemorative gift sponsored by SSSA. The information's up here. If you haven't registered for Canvas and you're attending, please add that to your registration. And if you have already registered, we've got the instructions on how to do that. And we'll put that in the Member Hub webinar circle as well and get that out to you. So now, in closing, thank you so much for joining us, and watch for a follow-up survey on the webinar, and hopefully we'll see all of you at Canvas. Thank you.
Second, that Susan, please consider joining our workshop in Canvas, and also my heartfelt thanks to all the panelists, and I hope to see some of you in the workshop also.
All right. Bye.